Hello, so I'm Tony from London Camera Exchange in Winchester, and today I'm joined by Toby Carter from Zeiss, who used to be a Zeiss ambassador, but is now a Zeiss
Business Development
Executive. We're here today to basically talk to you about the Zeiss Victory SFs, but also the new Zeiss SFLs that have just been released fairly recently. Firstly, I'd like to say that obviously through the years, I mean, I've been selling binoculars now for quite a number of years. I won't tell you how long, but I do remember selling back in the sort of like late 80s. We sold lots of Zeiss 10x40 BJTs. That was actually the bird's binocular of choice.
For my time.
Yeah, and historically through the years, you've made some really beautiful products. And what I'd like you to do, if you can, Toby, is just talk to us a little bit about, firstly, about the actual Victory SFs, the ones that were brought out in about 2016.
So 2015, 2014, around that mark. So the SFs are our premier binocular, the top of the range, ultra fluoride coating, and that really helps, especially in low light levels, gives you that crisp, smooth feel, so you can bird from dawn till dusk. The ergonomics of the binocular, a lot more of the glass is pushed towards the eyepiece, so when you're holding them, they're nice and balanced, you don't feel any of that weight. They're all round fantastic binocular. They're a good size, and personally, I use these all the time. I've had these for a few years now.
I mean, when I actually first tried them, if I'm being absolutely honest, my actually first impression was when I first got them out of the box, I actually thought they were quite long and quite big. But that quickly dispelled once I actually got them into my hands. And like you were just hinting at there, they're actually very, very well balanced in the hand.
Oh, they are. You can hold them like that, and then they're just balancing.
And they actually feel let's just say they actually feel lighter than actually what they are. Then obviously in my position I then have to compare them with other competitors' ones, which I obviously won't mention today. And what I would say is the actual optical quality that you get through those Victory SFs is as good as anything that I've actually seen on the market. So they're definitely right up there. So now, Toby, we've got the new SFL range from Zeiss. I believe I'm right in saying that the SF stands for SmartFocus, and the L is standing for light.
Correct.
Now, my first impression of the SFL binoculars, I actually opened a box for the very first time to show to a customer, and it was the 840s. And I've got to be brutally honest, I looked at these binoculars and first of all I thought they can't be 840s because they're actually so short. They look more like an 830, to be perfectly honest, 830, 832. And then when I picked them up out of the box, again, I was just staggered at how light they were. Perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about the SFL binoculars.
So as you stated, they're light, and that's due to there being thinner lens glass inside, and they've got magnesium housing, so that just really reduces the weight. They've got an ultra HD effect, which gives you a true color of what you're seeing. Got edge to edge sharpness throughout, so they're like you say, they're light. You think they're a 40. You compare them against the 42s.
Stunning.
But the difference is they're fantastic, these binoculars. They make a good binocular.
Am I right in saying you obviously hinted there at obviously each piece of glass or each element is actually now thinner?
Yes.
And that's actually allowed you to put the elements actually closer together in the binoculars, again reducing the overall size of the binoculars?
Yes, reducing the size, reducing the weight, meaning you can have them for longer. You can bird for longer during the day. Not that you can't with these, but
no.
From how different people are. I use these 1040s quite often. It's either my 1040s or my 1042s.
Sure.
That's my preferred choice.
And just obviously we just hinted a little bit there about the SmartFocus. You tell me if I'm right here, but what I believe that is basically you've put a very large sort of focusing wheel on there, but it's also in a spot-on position.
Where your fingers are.
And that means that your fingers aren't stretched. So when you're actually looking through a pair of binoculars for a long time, basically, you want the binoculars to be as comfortable as possible.
Exactly. And then also you can go from infinity to the shortest distance in barely any movement.
It's like 1.4 turns, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
And just in terms of weight, I think we've got on the SFL 30s, I think we're 460 grams.
Yep.
And I think on even the 840s and the 1040s are only 640 grams.
Which is light for a 10 for a 40 or anything.
These are all just incredibly lightweight binoculars, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, no, they're absolutely brilliant. One thing I wanted to talk about, obviously more recently, you've actually brought out now the 30. These are much more recent.
Yes. Started this year.
Yeah, so so you've now got an 830 and a 1030 in the range. Is this, how would you, do you benefit from a smaller, lighter weight binocular yourself? Or
I've got large hands. So personally, 30s are just that little bit too big for me.
Right.
But for a lot of people with smaller hands, 30s are excellent.
Yeah.
But when it comes for... Good thing about the SFLs and the SFs is how close you can focus.
Sure.
On these, it's down to 1.5 meters. It might even be a little bit less than that. So 30s, especially come the summer months when there's a lot more dragonflies and butterflies out.
Yeah.
You're going to be looking at them. These are going to come into a world of their own.
Yeah.
And I look forward to using them on that. And I probably will use a pair of 30s for that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think again, what you've just said there is everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's hand sizes is different. Everybody's eyes are different.
It's all subjective.
It's totally subjective. And so where perhaps a 1040 might suit somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, we're speaking a little bit earlier on, and for me personally, I'm different to you because I have a different use for binoculars. I use a sort of much more general purpose when I'm out walking. Perhaps I'm not a specific bird watcher, and for me, I just think overall, when you take everything into account, for me, the 8x30s is just a great wide field of view.
Good all round.
Again, it's very small and it's very light. And yeah, when you're walking 5-10 miles a day, that's absolutely superb.
That's what you want. So yeah, the 30s, especially the 830s, are a good all-round binocular that you can take out when you're hiking. Like I'm a birdie because you can call me a twitcher as well, but I'm always out, and for me, I always have a 10 times magnification because I'm usually out in broader areas than woodland and how we are. But if you are in wooded areas like this, then eights are what you're going to need.
Sure. We're going to now talk a little bit more about the Victory SFs.
Yeah.
And obviously, straight away, we know that the Victory SFs have got 42mm end objective rather than 40mm end objective. So how would that help us?
So that gives you a wider field of a wider objective, so more light can enter the binocular, and then that's where these have a 92% transmission compared to SFLs that have a 90% transmission.
Yeah.
And that 2% can give you around 15-20 minutes of extra use of the binocular in a twilight period. Okay. And that might not sound a lot, but that will become very useful in the summer months if you're looking at nightjars and owls and species like that. That is something that becomes very useful.
And when in fact, we've actually had a demonstration of that earlier on when you were showing me some birds in the
the firecrust singing in the trees.
And you know, that, as you quite rightly say, when you're actually looking at a very dark bird, particularly in a dark tree, then that extra transmission and the extra end objective size is really going to help.
It comes in handy, but then the 40s being the size of roughly a pair of 30s, what you get for that, these are fantastic. It's an all-round binocular, and like I say, pushing all of that, you on about the size against the 30s, so putting it into a 40, you are losing out slightly to the SFs, but for what you're getting for the size of them, they're fantastic.
It's still a really good all-rounder, isn't it? From what I understand it, both pairs of binoculars, they actually share an awful lot of the same features, even though the SFLs, let's be honest, they're a absolute fraction of the price of the Victory SFs.
Yeah.
But yet they share an awful lot of the same technology. And I think one of those things that I read is that they've actually both got field flatten a piece of glass inside them. So I just wondered if you could just explain the benefits of having that field flatten a piece of glass.
So what that does is it means from edge to edge, when you're looking through the binocular, it's all crisp, it's all clear. There's no curvature when you're looking at it, which other binoculars will have. And me just talking about that doesn't sound that important.
No.
But it's not until you start using it you realise how important that is, because all it takes is one bird to fly from one end of your binocular to the other, for you to realise that it's still in focus and it's still crisp all the way when it's flying across, not just for that central section.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I mean, one thing we can talk about now is it's actually now pouring down.
Yeah, just a bit.
Perhaps we'll talk a little bit about how weatherproof they are.
Yeah.
I believe they're, I think both pairs of binoculars are nitrogen filled.
Yes.
So in a downpour like this, they're not really going to come to any harm.
No, it's not a downpour just yet, so don't jinx it.
Yeah.
Touch wood.
Yeah. Touch wood. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe the coatings, they've got a low tech coating on them, so that means that basically any dirt or rain should just literally run.
They should just drive. Yeah. I've just come back from Israel at the end of March, which was a 24-hour bird race in the desert. And I used my SFLs throughout that, and in the desert, it's all the sand and all the mud, especially when it was after it rained. And these were perfectly fine for that. No dust, they were crisp and clear throughout the whole day. And that was 24 hours, so using it through the twilight periods and having them around my neck for a whole 24 hours. Again, the lightweight of them, didn't feel them. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So if we're going to just sum up just briefly, again, perhaps the benefits and possibly even disadvantages of 10s versus 8s versus 30s versus 40s. So yeah, perhaps you can just give us some idea about the different sort of specifications of the binoculars.
Yeah, so like I touched on earlier, when you've got a 10s, that's for you're using in more open areas. Wooded areas, you're going to be using 8s because the majority of the birds are going to be that bit closer to you.
Yeah.
10s give you that bit further of a reach. 40s or 42s obviously give you a wider focal point, letting a little bit more light. So they're better if you're going to be birding a lot during the day. But obviously having a larger objective at the end means that weight comes into it a little bit more, even though we've discussed there isn't much weight in these. Compared to a 30, more of a travel binocular and all round, like you say, you use them when you're hiking. And that's where that comes into it. So an 830 would be a really lightweight binocular, but that is going to struggle. Well, even a 1030 because of the extra magnification will struggle in low light conditions. But a 42, an 842 will be fantastic in low light.
And I suppose perhaps just one other consideration we might make is the fact that, and again, very subjective, everybody's going to be different, but I'm guessing that with a high magnification 10, you're possibly going to get a little bit more shake.
Yes.
So you probably have to be quite mindful. And again, you'd need to try the binoculars out.
Don't just buy binoculars. You try them out in person. But yes, I don't think people realise how much your hands will shake if you are using a 10. Especially if you're using it for a lot during the day. And it depends on how you hold them. Some people would hold a binocular like that. I personally hold it like that because then you've got your hand as a stabilizer. And then that all comes into it. But then also eyepieces, if you've got glasses, you might have the eyepieces down, and if you're not wearing glasses like we are, like you've got your eyepieces up. But I personally still have my eyepieces down and rest them on my eyebrows. But it's all subjective. It's all personal preference.
Sure. I've used a lot of binoculars over the years, Toby. An awful lot of binoculars over the years. I've been impressed by a lot of them, and I can literally quite honestly say that the new SFLs I would happily have around my neck and use them on a daily basis.
They're that good, are they?
They're just that good. I mean, we've been using them today, obviously, and I've used them in the past. They are just so incredibly lightweight. You can use them for long extended periods of time, like we have today. They don't make your arms ache. They feel comfortable. You don't even feel them around your neck.
No.
It is just staggering. So well done to Zeiss.
They've done a good job.
They've done a really cracking job. And what I'd also like to do is just thank you today for your time, Toby.
Thank you very much.
Very much appreciate
the weather hasn't held out there.
Sorry about the rain. So if you'd like to find out more, if you could click on the link below or visit your local London Camera Exchange store.